to welcome everybody to the Gamewreckers and Slobberknockers podcast. With us today is Coach Devin Spitzer. He's the defensive coordinator at Shawnee High School. He's going to talk a little bit about preparing DBs for a game. Coach, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Coach, I know a lot about you because I've been around the area. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Where have you coached at? Did you have a playing career? Anything like that?
Okay, I'm a graduate of Wittenberg. I played baseball and football there. I ended my football career a little bit early at Witt, but I came out of when I graduated and coached at Bishop Reedy High School in Columbus for 6 seasons, and then came to Springfield one season at the old North High School, and then I have been at Shawnee for the last, I think, 17 years. I've got that right. I can't keep track of my age, how long I've been coaching. But yeah, so 3 schools, a little bit of everything.
Coach, when were you at Bishop Reedy? What years? Do you remember?
My first football season was 96.
Okay. Then we just missed each other because when I was at Miami Trace as the offensive coordinator, we played Bishop Reedy like 2 years. It was a home and home. And the last year we played them, we had this is a true story. Couldn't make it up if I wanted to because it makes me feel this bad. The first half, we had 320 yards rushing in the first half. The second yard, I don't know if we had 10. The second half, I don't know if we had 10 yards of rushing offense. It was awful. I'm like, this is easy.
We played Trace. I think we played them once when I was there, and we came back and won at the very end. I don't know, but I'm not sure what year it was. It would have been more closer to 2000, I think.
That might have been me because I was there 99 to 2003.
It would have been then because we had a kid hauled off in an ambulance. He was so dehydrated after that game.
Man, I tell you what, that was one of the funnest games to be in for a half for me.
Did we stack our receivers?
Yes.
That was us.
Oh, my goodness. How about that? The things you learn doing these things. Yeah, so I was part of that mess, Coach. Holy cow.
Yeah, that's Larry Wolf at Bishop Reedy. Yeah, that's right.
And then being at North, proud Panther alum right here.
Oh,
and then where I've gotten to know you most is being at Shawnee. So kind of who has been the biggest influence on how you coach defense, how you design your defense?
Well, as far as schematically, I don't know. That's been 1,000 clinics and different things. But I think Larry Wolf from Reedy's probably the guy I learned the most from, is just how to coach, period. But as far as schematically, I mean, when I came to Shawnee, Rick had said he'd already they'd already had some camp days my first year there,
right, and
they'd already put the 50 in. So that's why we ran the angle 50 for so many years. It was already in. It was what they'd been doing. So I just adopted that. That wasn't, people called that my defense, but it happened to be what I played for Steve Bartlett in high school. That's what we ran in high school, but it had nothing to do with that. It was because it was already been partially installed. So that's what we did. Now we switched this year to a 3-4. So
right.
For the first time, but I'd say Larry Wolf's probably the biggest influence.
And playing for a Hall of Famer like Coach Bartlett, playing at Wittenberg, I think those things are awesome to hear. And then even though this is the argument we got into amongst our own staff was like, well, what's the 50 and the difference between the 50 and 3-4? I said, who's off the line and who's on the line? It's the same daggone defense.
Yeah, that's not right. You're all right about that.
Everybody, this year's kind of had to deal with COVID. How did it affect your coaching this year? How did COVID affect you, your players? How did it change the season for you guys?
Well, it started first in the summer where we couldn't really, I don't know, some other schools I know were together. We couldn't get together. So there wasn't a lot of install or anything in the summer going on. The coaches we met in the garage and all that and tried to do the best we could to get ready because we were putting in a new defense.
Right.
So we had to really do that. But the kids, I'd say we weren't nearly as prepared as we would be. Now, the issue with me was guys week to week. We might lose a guy that we planned on playing. All of a sudden he's quarantined and we can't use him. That was the hardest thing. I thought couldn't always put your best guys on the field because you just weren't allowed to access them, especially when they weren't even sick. You know, the quarantine thing is really difficult. I'm not saying right or wrong, but
Right.
when a guy's perfectly healthy, he's just sitting at home because somebody he knew had it. So all of a sudden you can't have him. So that was tough.
We were lucky enough we didn't have a positive test all year, and we lost. It was kind of like two groupings. One early in the season where we lost some of our freshmen and sophomores because they were on a bus with a person who had it. And the other one we had late in the season. Now, this is the one that really hurt us. Our starting outside linebacker, backup quarterback, backup fullback, backup wing. So a guy that played a multitude of positions for us, he got contact traced out too, and, never had it. And it's, it was one of those things that you always – I felt like this year for us, I don't know about you, always felt like waiting on the shoe to drop. Like –
Yes.
And you were always on edge. And, I couldn't – when the season was over, I was kind of glad because I could breathe a little bit. Like, we got through 10 games. And when
I didn't think we were going to play at all. I didn't think we were going to play at the beginning of the year. Luckily, we got prepared, but I'm like, why are we even wasting our time? We're not going to play, but we did. Obviously we did.
Yeah, and you guys had a heck of a run, went deep into the playoffs again.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Surprising. We losing the team the year before, we lost almost every player from that team. We got a nice draw in the postseason. It worked out. And I think part of the reason we had success is we didn't play that many games, so we didn't get that banged up. We weren't that deep,
right?
But if you're only, we only played 5 games the regular season, so 4 playoff games wasn't even still
right.
A full season of football. Yeah.
Well, good. All right. Hey, now, Coach, watching you over the years. You always seem to have your guys in the right spot. It just seems to happen. Now, how when you go to do this, especially with your DBs, because I think today's DBs are a lot different than when you and I played DBs, and even probably when we first started coaching their DBs. Playing DB now I think is probably a lot harder because of what offenses are doing.
Yeah, it is.
So how do you prepare your DBs for a game there at Shawnee?
Okay, so I just thought about this. Well, first of all, the one thing we do now is, at least in the last 4 or 5 years, is we teach everybody 2 positions on defense, which is probably one of the few things I can add that I don't think too many people do. And that's even including like a kid might be a safety and an outside backer for us, might play corner, but also play safety, which isn't as bizarre, I think, but and even some stranger combinations. But just with our depth at the size of school, we go ahead and decide as freshmen coming in now, here are your 2 positions that you're going to learn. And it takes them a little longer sometimes, but man, it pays off down the road when you try to do some of the things that I was going to mention, where you're matching up things with different teams. A guy can go down and play outside backer as well as play the free safety spot, which is something that I wouldn't have thought was possible before, but they can do it. So that's one thing, is that game to game, you might be playing a different position. It isn't like this guy's always going to be lined up here. He's always going to be, they know how to play multiple spots. So that helps in preparation too, where we can do a little bit more than some teams can, because we plan on that right from the start.
Right. No, that's a great idea. I know I've never done that. I've never taught a kid, we may have taught our inside linebackers and our outside linebackers the same because, just because for same reason, like depth, everybody thinks, you coach at a big school. Not really. And we still have depth issues because I promise you that our second outside linebacker may be better than my second inside linebacker. So if I can move somebody before I get to my second inside linebacker.
We try to get the best 11, which I used to think I understood that, but now I truly feel like that's what that means. You may have to move a guy to put a better backup in than the guy that would have been in.
Right.
It's dangerous if you lose 2 or 3 guys, but it's been working pretty well for us.
That's good. Now, when you guys, what kind of offenses do you see? Do you see, is everybody running the spread, or is it like whatever is out there is out there?
Oh my gosh. Our conference, and we play London, which is running 2 and 3 tight ends and 2 back eye. John Alder is a one-back team, but they have an H-back. It's like running against an I team. I mean, they're
Right.
and because people always talk about spread, and we still see the spread, but the teams that are dominating our conference, like was Bellefontaine, they're the same thing. They're a one-back team, but they've got that H-back. It's like playing a two-back team, and they spread out to run the ball. So we see a lot of power stuff, but we also see the spread too. Kenton Ridge runs spread, so there are teams that we pretty much see everything. I mean, we pretty much, and we saw wing T in the playoffs, and we saw,
Traditional under the center wing tee?
under center wing T.
Holy cow! Now, was it buck or belly based?
They were buck based, I think.
Oh,
They mixed it up pretty well.
Nice.
Their best guy was their halfback, so that's why I think they were more buck.
Absolutely.
But yeah, we see the whole thing, and that's another thing I was thinking too, that figuring out which guys against those teams, because you got a couple good cover guys. They're not playing against London. I mean, they're not going to play because they just don't spread you out or anything. So you got to have guys that can do both.
Right. I think that's, the part of being a DB is knowing when you have to be the cover guy and when you have to be I'm going to come up and I'm going to set the edge.
Yeah.
Right. And for that to be the same kid isn't always true.
No,
every once in a while you'll get that DB that can. Like we had a kid that ended up going to St. Francis in Indiana, won a couple national championships in the NAIA with him. And he was that corner. He could cover anybody. And I told teams, I said, quit throwing the bubble because he's going to kill your wide receiver that's trying to come out there and catch it. And he's going to come up and he's going to kill him. Yeah. So those kids are. So you're kind of in the same spot we get to at times where you have to deal with trying to find the kids that fit. So running the 3-4, how do you deal with a team that does do the two tight ends? Because, I've talked about this on my podcast before. As a former defensive coordinator, I hated two tight end offenses because they make you balance up immediately.
Yeah, that's the gap. Yeah, it's tough. I mean, to make a long story short, is we usually bring in more of a linebacker type kid, and maybe sometimes two. I remember a couple years ago, we actually only played one DB one game. It was like 5-6 linebackers. Attack, because that's about all we could do. Give us a chance.
Right. So, and I think, one of the things that can happen now is I think these running offenses, like what you said, they are spreading you out so they can still run the ball, whether it's
exactly right.
Whether it's one back with an H back or, you get some of these guys that are still in a two back spread look.
And that's a determination we make too on Sundays. What are we really doing here? What are we really trying to stop? Are they really running the ball and these guys out spread out or just window dressing to get you out of the box?
Right. With shifts and motions. Absolutely. The window dressing.
Yeah.
Is there anything specific you do with your DBs in the week to kind of get them, is it more film study? Is it, how do you prep them for what they're going to see? Let's say you're going to face a team that's balanced. They're spreading you out, but they still are going to throw the ball enough to make you have to play 4 DBs.
Well, one thing we do, even in our two-a-days and everything, but we do it week to week, that I've found to be really helpful is and we run 3, like 3 coverages. And I'm not saying we run 3 coverages every game, the whole game, but what I've done is I have decided to practice the route concepts. Like say we're working on a team that's running sprint out concepts a lot. We'll put the scout team on a hash and we'll run our cover 3 and they'll run whatever concept it is. And then they'll come right back and we'll run cover 2 and they'll run the same play. And then we'll come back and run like our match and they'll run the same play. So it's kind of bizarre, but I felt like it was better because the kids got a feel, and we do this right from the beginning of two-a-days. They got a better feel for how the coverages change if you hit them with the same route out of the 3 coverages. I used to do it where we're going to learn this coverage before we move to the next thing. But I felt like if they see the same route and how they're supposed to react out of the different coverages, I feel like they learn faster and they understand it better. Like on this particular route in cover 3, I keep dropping, but on this one in cover 2, I'm the guy that jumps this thing, and they really start to pick that up. I feel like that's been the difference in why we've been able to run multiple coverages where we haven't as much in the past.
Right.
It's just hitting them with that same route and then go to the next route and hit them 3 times in a row, 3 different coverages. And if you got enough guys, you can set it up. And you got a Bob DeLong who can run a good scout team. You can run, you get 2 groups going at once, and you can get a ton of reps in a short amount of time. But that's been really helpful. It's the same route against 3 different coverages instead of several routes against the same coverage.
So when your kids are in season, since you started that in 2-a-days, they're in season and like, hey, we're gonna get the sprint out concept this week. So the kids already have in their mind like, okay, so we're gonna get this, and this on this sprint out, and it takes kind of the thinking of it away. I kind of like that idea of, because I think I've always been kind of that same thought process of, hey, let's make sure we get cover 3 down before we work on cover 2. Because you're afraid of them getting confused. And I think kids, are probably a little bit more savvy today of understanding some things. And they have to know different stuff, because it wasn't like back in the day, hey, you played cover 3 or you played man, and that's all you needed to play, because everything else would be fine.
That's right. You can't do that now. There's no question.
You sit in one coverage. Those guys over there, they do coach, and they study film.
That's right.
And Huddle has made it unbelievable to study film and makes it so much easier.
And that's the other thing too, is we use Huddle, and I'm sure you do the same thing, but we put it depends on what the team's doing, but like if it's a team that has a formation or 2 that they run the same things, we might give them clips of that formation to study that formation over and over and over. Or if it's a team that runs a certain series of plays, it'll just be those plays, and they can just watch that same play so they can study that kid's steps.
Right.
Study, this is that play. He does this jab step on this play only. And I think that's helped with Huddle too. You can just make those films really fast, really fast. And they can see better.
What I do with my linebackers is kind of like what you talked about, giving them films of the same play. And so, I know, like my guys know our key is probably going to change. Maybe one week it's the tailback that's really going to be the one giving us our key. And other ones, it's the guard. And I always tell them, hey, now if we're keying the guard, trust me on this, fat kids never lie, because they are not running somewhere they don't have to.
That's a good point.
I told him, I said, hey, your girlfriend will lie to you, that guard will not.
We do that. And along with that same note is Rick Meeks, our head coach, he gives us a lot of defensive time early in the week. So my advice to someone who's coaching defense is get as much of your stuff done. Like on Monday, we meet briefly to talk about our opponent. Then we break out into individual defense. Then we come back together and as a defense again and walk through their stuff. And then, we might run and lift, but then we come back to defense again and do a check period where we're checking so they get a ton of defensive practice, mental practice on a Monday. And then our heavy emphasis is on Tuesday's defense. So, by the time we leave Wednesday, I want to be able to I can't say we're always ready, but we could play Thursday, because we've already had all that, because defense, as changes week to week, whereas offense, you're going to run your stuff. Somebody might line up over here, but you're going to run it. And he does a good job of letting us get that preparation in real early. We don't save anything. I've talked to a couple coaches. They're talking about how they don't have this meeting till Wednesday. And I'm like, how do you do that late in the week? We have to have our stuff in every week early. The first 2 days, it's done.
I hate saying anything on a Wednesday practice that I haven't already said earlier in the week, because you're too late. You're too close to the game. And Thursday, don't say anything now. Just be quiet.
Yeah.
And we have to – don't try to add anything on Thursday. Let it ride. We'll figure it out.
Yes.
Because I think it will mess with kids more if you do it that way. Is there any specific play that you hate for your DBs? Like if you see them run this route concept, or the one that kind of gets us every once in a while is speed option away from trips. Like, so they're bet 3-by-1 and they're going to run speed option to the single receiver side. And when that receiver's taking off on a vertical route. Is there any play like that drives you nuts? Like, oh man, here we go. I'm glad we've repped this already because I don't want to have to do this new.
Yeah, I just think the hardest thing for our guys is the comeback route. Jonathan Alder, who had such an unbelievable year with their quarterback and their all-state receiver, that comeback was virtually unstoppable, man. They just dropped so deep, rolled him out, half roll, really deep, couldn't get to him. And they had a big, super fast kid. And if you sat on the comeback, it was a touchdown deep, but man, that comeback route is just really tough. Unless you can trick them into the coverage, they don't expect it. It's really difficult to stop that comeback route.
Right.
If they execute. Now they got to execute, and Alder had the guys, several year starter guys back that can do it.
That's true. Now, do your guys, are they reading the route, or are they, so like, and don't tell me, I don't want you to give away the secrets here, but are they more route reading it as they're going? Because I'm with you, the comeback, if it's run right, oh man.
Yeah. Oh, I know, it's brutal. No, it depends actually. I mean, it really does. It depends on the coverage, and that's one of those things where, working the coverage versus the route that I mentioned earlier. It depends on what they're doing. Like if you catch us in a certain coverage, it'll be tougher to stop it than if it was in another because they're sitting on it. We'll play man too. We'll press and play off, and it just depends. It depends on what we're doing.
I've had a discussion with a former wide receiver coach of ours, and he goes, I don't know why everybody in America doesn't play press coverage because no wide receiver wants to get hit. And I'm like, because Corey, if we miss, it's 6 the other way. It's like it's gone. Like it's touchdown. I said, and now everybody in the stands hates that DB. Like, all you hear people say, oh, he blew the coverage. Well, maybe it wasn't that kid's fault. Maybe he's supposed to have help over top. But no, I understand that, you got to try to mix it up as best you can with those guys who, because like we talk, they're getting coached. It's not like the old days when, people weren't throwing the ball and, things like that.
Well, and the percentages too. And there's so many factors. Because people talk to me about defense and they're like, you're always dodging the question. I'm like, not really. I mean, who's the running back? Is he so good that you can't turn your back on him? Or, is this receiver, are they low percentage out there? If you press, you're probably okay. And you're taking a little bit. It all depends on the guys in the uniforms and what they can do.
As Bob DeLong taught me, is that the superintendent's grandson out there at wide receiver? Because if it is, we might be able to get away with playing man over there and rolling zone to the field.
Yeah, so, that's right.
Absolutely. You got to find who are they hiding somebody? Yes. Absolutely. Well, Coach, what's the best advice you would give a young coach who's trying to get into coaching, whether it be just getting a job or somebody that's trying to get a coordinator's position? What's the best piece of advice you could give them?
I would probably say for a young coach is absolutely, two things. Master the position that you're coaching. I mean, do an unbelievable job. Don't try to do more than you're supposed to do. Be a guy that your coordinator can count on, that every week. I want to know every week what my guys have to do, and they will be ready to do that every week. To me, those guys are invaluable. And then when the time is for you to go to clinics and whatever, study everything that you can. Study all the positions, don't just focus on the one. So on one hand, be the guy that your coordinator or head coach can count on to have your guys totally prepared week to week. And on the other hand, when it's off season, study and know as much as you can. If you're needed somewhere else or you're ready to move up, whatever, then you can do that too.
Yeah, absolutely true. So you talk about mastering your position and knowing other positions. Is there any position you haven't coached in your career?
I've coached safeties, corners, inside backers, outside backers. I don't know that I've ever coached the defensive line, honestly. Offensively, I've coached backs and quarterbacks for the most part, but we're two platoon coaching now, so I've been coaching defense for several years. But Probably the both sides of the line.
Right.
That's probably what I haven't coached, individual coach.
Right. But you still know what's going on. You know enough that you can.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know when something's not right. Like, hey, wait a minute, something's wrong
Yeah.
here.
Well,
Right?
I've got the great Rex Plimal, so I know he's one of those guys I just described. The detail,
Right.
he know what we have to do. So yeah, you got to know what's going on.
Yeah. Those guys are hard. When you don't have them, they stick. It's like, man, ooh, this is really a spot for us where we're lacking effort. We're not necessarily effort, but what you're lacking. Like you don't have that guy that knows.
Yes, I've been lucky to have several good defensive line coaches over the years. I haven't had to worry about it.
Right. Hey, when you got the good ones, man, it does make your job as the coordinator easier.
I'd say one other thing I would say too, just on an X and O type of, is coach success. Like I didn't do that for years. Don't coach failure, coach the success. So like we'll do one-on-ones. We compete from time to time. I know coaches are all about competition and drills, but at the same time, like if you're working on slants and fades, teach a success, let them get the feel to get it right.
Right. Oh no, that's a great
push them, let them make mistake after mistake and never really know how it feels to do it right. So that's something I think that I didn't know as a young coach, and is to let them get a feel for. And even throughout the season, we do that. We don't do it in 2 days. We'll still do slant drill. We're just fitting the slant. We're fitting the fade. We're fitting these one-on-one stuff. Even zone too. Sometimes just knowing what the route is. Just make the call, make the break when you see it. That kind of stuff. Just to get the feel of what it's supposed to be like.
No, that's a good point. Coaching the success, not the failures. And when they do it right, I think sometimes celebrating the success more than you demean, then you demean the failure. Like, you never do this, or that's the one thing that drives me as nuts as a coach is when a kid says, "I'm never gonna be able to do X," instead of like, "Hey, no, you can't do it right now, but we're gonna keep working on it until you get it right."
Agreed.
And I think that's whatever it is, not just defense, offense, and in life in general with kids. I think sometimes they're so used to the automatic success with everything that they forget how to be successful. All right, Coach. Well, it's that time of the program. Gamewrecker and Slobberknocker. All right, and I think me giving you this in, it looked like you were going to be a little panicked about who you were going to pick. So, who is the best game wrecker you've ever coached?
I'm gonna have to say Lucas Sparks.
Okay, why Lucas?
Guy was unblockable. Only player I've ever coached that other teams just could not block. All the way to the state finals, could not be blocked. Absolute beast. And the thing about him that was awesome was the physical tools, but so smart. If you told him when they do this, this is the play. I mean, he was all over it. And it didn't matter. Nobody was fast enough or big enough or strong enough to block him. He won every battle for 15 games.
Yeah, hey, that was a heck of a run. So it's kind of nice to see that guy was one of those guys for you. Maybe that's why you made the state finals. And I still think you guys should have won. I think there were some shady calls in that game. I'm calling it now.
He was a national champ at St. Francis as well.
Okay.
That's where he went.
All right, man. So it sounds like they got a little bit Southwest in them up there in the northeast part of Indiana, little Southwest Ohio. All right, Coach. Biggest Slobberknocker hit.
All right. Well, this one's probably one that isn't legendary, but in 2004, we had a linebacker named Marcus Hall, and he hit Bell Fountain's fullback on an ISO and knocked him. And for non-football people, they may not get it, 3 yards backwards into the tailback. And it wasn't, if you weren't paying attention, it doesn't look, it wasn't a guy's helmet flying off, whatever, but he filled like a cannonball. And we showed that for years. I've since lost the tape. I think we've changed mediums. It's not like a VH tape anymore, VHS. But, I mean, that was one of those things where I just got goosebumps. I mean, that kid didn't know what hit hhim and knocked him back into the tailback and knocked him down.
You know what? You're the second coach that's picked a Slobberknocker on a fill. It hasn't been, it hadn't been the open field thing. It's been the guy coming, filling for whatever reason it is. If you're filling, and the other one was on a fullback. So that's, hey, there is nothing like, filling.
Yeah.
If he does it right.
That's the job right there.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Awesome. All right. So here we go. It's called Bring in the House. 5 rapid fire questions. First thing that comes to your mind. Favorite college fight song?
Ohio State's.
Okay. Awesome. Best memory from any game?
Probably, man, that's hard, Coach. I would say right off the top of my head, probably the state semifinal game. Just realization, 2011, you're going to state finals.
Right.
You've been there as a coach watching, you've seen them. Just unbelievable.
And now you get to play the weekend after. You're going to practice, the weekend after Thanksgiving, and you're going to go up there. And you guys played at Fawcett Stadium that year, right? It was at Fawcett.
I think so. Yeah, I think
that was. I went to the game. I was the guy standing up in the stands because I've never had a chance to be.
That's always been me. I know. That's always been me.
Okay. All right. You got to pick Tom Brady or Joe Montana.
Oh, Montana.
Thank you. My son will pick Tom Brady's got 6 rings. I said Joe Montana's the best ever because he had to play when the defense wasn't being handicapped.
That's right. That's right. You actually had to play quarterback. You weren't sitting behind a glass wall.
And Jerry Rice was getting jammed off the line for 10 yards down the field.
Yes.
All right. Favorite Saturday morning cartoon as a kid?
Probably Super Friends.
Super Friends. Yeah, and the Legion of Doom. Awesome. All right, Coach, your favorite pizza?
Ooh, right now I'm really high on Bogies on 68.
Okay. So a little local place there. Pretty good pizza?
Yeah, it's good pizza.
Awesome. I'll have to try it out. All right, Coach. Hey, I appreciate you coming on here today. Look forward to seeing how you guys get better next year. Maybe make it a little next deeper run. I appreciate everybody tuning in to Gamewreckers and Slobberknockers. We'll catch you next time.